What is gender? Gender is a confusing semantic mess, to say the least. That's why I will attempt to logic through it in this video. By the title, you can correctly assume that I found the gender spectrum to be practically useless and will lead to harmful implications if it continues to be enforced the way it is today.
Male to female procedures has increased by 74%.
I did become suicidal.
One banning transgender children from using the bathroom.
I'm sorry, you don't tell children that they were born in the wrong body because they're children and they will believe you.
So let's begin with the definition. Gender is interchangeable with sex, and there are only two sexes, male and female. Every culture expresses sex differently, but what stays the same is heteronormativity. We separate by sex differences with children in school and bathrooms and other physical spaces, sports, product marketing, fashion stereotypes, etc. The problem is that heterosexuality is considered normal and everyone else is considered less valuable and treated as such. Those who don't conform to the heteronormative culture are excluded from society. The first solution is to change the social norms through the marketplace of ideas. We can usually appeal to universality, like, hey, why can't women wear jeans or go to work and vote just like men do? And we can continue to apply this liberal standard until everyone is treated equally. Of course, there will always be a wall of natural disparities because these social norms exist for a reason. So long as sex differences matter to people, then norms will arise from it and people will be harmed by those norms. That's why the second solution may be more appealing. Instead of changing the social norms, let's eliminate them altogether. In order to do that, we must make sex differences arbitrary. So, how do we do that? The common belief nowadays is to say that the gender binary is false. Intersex exists, which proves that sex is variable and the binary is too restrictive. Now, that is an inaccurate conclusion because intersex is not a third sex. In order for there to be a third sex, there has to be a third gamete type, which doesn't exist throughout the entire animal kingdom. In reality, intersex is an umbrella term for several chromosomal, gonadal, or genital conditions which sometimes make categorizing someone as only male or female difficult. These are variations of sex characteristics and reproductive organs that can only be categorized as male or female and nothing else. Variations in sex characteristics does not mean each variation is another sex. Think of it like a mix of water and oil. There's an infinite mix of sex characteristics, but there are only two sexes. In this regard, intersex does not violate the sex binary. And when people say that the sex binary is false, what they really mean is that the sex characteristics binary is false. And besides, intersex people for the most part already fit within male-female categories. Within this minority of intersex people is a minority of truly ambiguous intersex people who don't fit into male-female categories well. There is a real conversation to be had here, but that's not what the politics focuses on. Intersex is used as a springboard for the more radical idea that people can choose their own gender. The gender binary already offers all the variation we need. A man who likes to wear dresses is still a man, and a more muscular woman is still a woman. Conforming or not conforming to gender stereotypes doesn't change your sex. Even transgender people fit into the binary. A man who transitions into a woman is still a man, but may be considered an honorary woman if they pass for a woman or if we all decide on local levels to treat them as such. But essentially, a trans woman is a variation of a man. Now this is called gender essentialism. Trans woman, gay man, intersex man, drag queen. They're all still variations of man, because it all depends on your sex, which doesn't change throughout your life. And same goes for variation for women. Another way people try to destroy the gender binary is through an appeal to history. They say, there have been gender non-conforming people throughout history, and that proves there is more than just man and woman. Historical evidence of non-conforming people does not prove that men can be women, and vice versa. The only thing this proves is that there were always people that disagreed with the labels, not that they were right. But that might not matter, because people who use the historical appeal operate on a different truth about gender. They engage in definition hijacking. If you change the definition of a word to mean something else, then you can make anything true. And that is exactly what happened with gender. The word gender is not interchangeable with sex anymore. It instead refers to the social constructions of man, woman, girl, boy. Gender is stereotypes, those social norms regarding sex differences, and gender identity is how one feels about them. These feelings exist on a spectrum, the gender spectrum. For example, a man can like wearing dresses while also like being muscular, while also being attracted to men, while also desiring romance more than sex, while also not feeling like a man or a woman sometimes, and on the feelings go. Every mix of feelings and stereotypes is a new gender identity, a new color, which requires a different label. There are possibly infinite genders like there are infinite colors. So this is how someone can say gender is not binary, because gender doesn't mean sex anymore. And now there is a logical basis to make sex differences arbitrary and dismantle everything built from it. This new definition doesn't actually challenge the old definition. The gender-sex binary categorizes sex differences, whereas the gender spectrum categorizes feelings about those social norms from those sex differences. They're two completely different criteria. Therefore, the gender binary and the gender spectrum can coexist. The real problem is that these two ideas are competing for the words man and woman. The binary says that male is man and female is woman. The gender spectrum says that man and woman are two feelings, just two categories among infinite feelings. Someone could feel like a woman trapped inside a man's body. The gender spectrum considers these people a woman, or whatever label suits their feelings, and you can change that label to whatever more accurately aligns with your feelings. These labels are empty categories with no meaning. Unless you feel they have meaning, then they are meaningful only to you. As you can see, the gender spectrum operates on the postmodernist philosophy. Without going too much into the rabbit hole of postmodernism, I'll just give you a quick example. I have my phone here. You and I would call it a cell phone probably, but in another culture it might be called a hammer, or another one it would be called a flashlight, or another culture it would just be called a useless piece of junk. Any one or combination of these labels does not actually get to the essence of what this thing actually is. I can call it a phone, but that won't show us its usefulness as a hammer or a flashlight. I could call it a complex mix of atoms and molecules and, lay it all out. But still, that wouldn't be enough to get to what this thing actually is. No amount of words could ever do so. If you are unconvinced of this radical idea, try explaining color to a blind guy and see how far language gets you. This is to say, objective truth is unattainable. We can only know our own subjective realities. So any ideology that falsely claims to know objective truth, like science, rationality, reason, which are the tenets of modernism, are merely oppressive discourses that must be deconstructed. Keeping that in mind, let's practice using the gender spectrum. I say I'm a man. You can't prove me wrong, because you can't know what I'm feeling, or my subjective reality. And I can't prove myself right either, because language is a construct that can't communicate objective truth. You can't prove me wrong, and I can't prove myself right. So all we can do is believe each other no matter what. Whatever I say goes for me, and whatever you say goes for you. I say I'm a man because sex characteristics matter to me. Man is biological. The gender spectrum actually allows this because it's not that biology actually matters, but that it only matters to me. If you're a biological female and call yourself a man, then sex characteristics don't matter to you, and man is a feeling. We are using two different meanings for the same word, and we're both right. There's no logical consistency. I say 2 + 2 = 4, you say 2 + 2 = 5, and we're both right. That's perfectly okay, because logical consistency is rational, and rationality is an oppressive discourse. There's no standard of proof, and thus gender is unfalsifiable and unprovable. There is no test we can administer to prove others' self-defined labels. Subjective reality is treated as objective truth. Again, the labels are empty categories with no meaning because the meaning changes for every person. The gender spectrum resists the whole point of categorization itself, which is to define things. They want the value associated with categories without the inevitable exclusion from actually defining what something is. You will not find a limit to the number of genders there are, because by setting a limit, you will oppress someone who doesn't fit into any of those categories. So we just open it up. We can never assume anything about anyone. You can look like a woman and dress like a woman, but if you call yourself a man, then you're a man. Even if people present a way on the outside, we can never know what they are on the inside. If someone dresses like a lesbian, they can actually be a gay man on the inside. We don't know if presentation matters to them. And if we do assume that, then we are projecting a harmful meta-narrative that presentation matters onto people that don't believe that presentation matters. This logic is exactly how the LGBT movement was hijacked by the TQ+. LGB are sexual orientations which already exist within the binary and have defined categories. To be gay, you have to be a biological man who's attracted to biological men. Even the terms transgender man and transgender woman already fit within the binary. Man transitioning to female is still essentially a man, and vice versa for women. There's an actual basis for categorizing transgender. It's someone who suffers from gender dysphoria and transitions with surgeries. Unfortunately, actual transgender people are lumped in with people who just call themselves trans. It's become another empty category like non-binary or queer. And like intersex, transgender is just another springboard for the gender spectrum ideology. By taking away the power of gender categories, the labels of man and woman don't have any power over the people who don't fit them well. And that's the whole point, to eliminate the oppressive power structure even at the cost of rationality. This is why the gender spectrum is so confusing to understand, because you literally must forego your belief in science in order to align yourself with this ideology. It's incredibly convoluted because normal people just want to be kind, and they must reject the truth to do so. If you believe in reason, rationality, science, and logic, then you are on grounds to question the gender spectrum. It is a self-serving ideology which misses the point of categorization. That's why I say the gender spectrum is useless. You must sacrifice the truth for the sake of ideology, and that can never be the right thing to do. It is irrational by design, while playing a zero-sum game when there's already a better solution, which is really the only solution. Liberalism, using the marketplace of ideas to eliminate inequality. It might be a slow change, but it works without sacrificing modernism. And what I believe you'll find is that the gender binary already works and offers all the variation that people need. For ambiguous intersex people who are actually uncategorizable, we can find local solutions for that. And we can continue to destigmatize LGBT through liberal appeals. But we can only destigmatize, not normalize, because up to a point we will be faced with the reality that most people are heterosexual. What the critical theorists seem to forget is that humans are a sexually reproducing species, and society needs children. Society will inevitably be heteronormative, and should be heteronormative if we want a society at all. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that to apply the gender spectrum is to seek not just the destruction of social norms, but of society altogether. No matter how we chop up society or change society to include everyone, non-conforming people will always be different, and it is impossible to change that reality. We can continue to use liberal appeals as a society, but up to a point, it's up to them to overcome that discomfort of being different rather than upend society. And that's all any individual can really do.